Welcome back for another deep dive with us.
Glad to be here.
Today we're going to be looking at extinction.
Yes.
It's something that we get asked about a lot, and it's one of those topics that a lot of people kind of think they know what it is,
Right.
but maybe they don't really know what it is.
Yeah, actually.
And so we've got some good sources today that are going to really kind of highlight, what extinction is, and some examples of how we can use it.
It's way more nuanced than people think.
Exactly.
Or more than just ignoring something.
Yeah. So let's jump right in and let's talk about a case.
Okay.
This is a case about a man named Willie who is 54 years old, and he has a mild intellectual disability.
Okay.
And he lives in a group home.
Okay.
And Willie exhibits some problem behaviors. Specifically, he's argumentative and makes sexist comments
Oh, wow.
when he's asked to do things by female staff.
Okay.
Now, when we look at this on the surface, you might think, oh, he's just being difficult.
Right.
But of course, we know better than that, right?
There's got to be more to it.
There's got to be more to it. And a functional assessment was actually done.
Okay.
And they determined that Willie's behavior was maintained by attention from the female staff.
Makes sense.
And this was even negative attention, like arguing with him, explaining things to him.
Right.
So even that attention was reinforcing to Willie.
So he's getting something out of it.
Yeah.
And that's why he keeps doing it.
Exactly. And so that's where extinction comes in.
Okay.
So in Willie's case, the staff were all trained to withhold any form of attention
Okay.
following any instances of that problem behavior. So no arguing, no explaining, no, visible signs of frustration.
Right. So they're just like completely neutral.
Exactly.
Like a robot.
Exactly. And, it sounds hard to do, right?
Oh, I bet.
It's hard to do. Like, I would want to react to some of these comments.
Yeah.
But it's important that everybody's on the same page.
Everyone's consistent.
Everyone's consistent. And that includes
Even the parents.
even the parents, right?
Yeah. Like if they go home on the weekends or something.
Right. So they even talked to Willie's parents to make sure that they weren't reinforcing those behaviors on the weekends.
Okay, so everyone was in on it.
Everyone was in on it.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we've got this extinction procedure in place where they're withholding attention.
Right.
But what about the flip side of that?
Like reinforcing other behaviors?
Yeah, what are they doing to reinforce appropriate behavior?
Okay.
So in addition to the extinction, they were also reinforcing any instances of cooperative behavior from Willie.
Okay.
So if he completed a task without any fuss, they were praising him,
Yeah.
giving him positive attention, acknowledging his efforts.
So it's not just ignoring the bad, it's also focusing on the good.
Exactly. And it's all about building up those positive behaviors
Right.
so that they can kind of take the place of those problem behaviors.
Yeah, I love that.
But there's something that we have to consider,
Okay.
and it's called an extinction burst.
Extinction burst.
So what that means is that
So the behavior gets worse before it gets better? Okay.
it might actually escalate temporarily when you first start withholding that reinforcer.
Like he's trying harder to get the reaction he's used to?
Exactly. He's used to getting that attention, and now he's not.
He's thinking, what's going on here?
Yeah, and so he might try even harder
To get that attention back.
to get that attention back, right? And so, going back to Willie's example, we might see those argumentative behaviors
Yeah.
or the sexist comments might actually increase at first.
Right.
Before they start to decrease.
But eventually they'll decrease if you're consistent,
Right.
if you don't give in.
If you give in during that burst,
Oh, then you're sunk.
you're sunk. You've just
Yeah,
reinforced.
you just taught him to do it more.
Exactly. You've reinforced that behavior. And so, extinction bursts, it's really important to understand that they can happen
And be prepared for them.
and have a plan.
Exactly.
So we're starting to see, extinction's a little bit tricky to implement.
It's not as simple as it sounds.
Exactly. And there's more to it than just ignoring, but we're just scratching the surface here.
I'm ready for more.
Okay. Like what?
Well, let's think about a kid who refuses to eat certain foods,
Okay.
like picky eating.
Yeah.
But what if the function of that refusal is actually escape?
Escape.
Like maybe they don't like the taste or texture of
Yeah.
those foods, and they've learned that if they refuse to eat it,
Yeah.
they can avoid that yucky experience.
Yeah, I get it.
So the refusal becomes their escape.
So they're escaping the food.
Exactly.
Okay.
So in that case, extinction would involve preventing that escape.
Okay.
So instead of taking the food away when the child refuses, the parent or the therapist would just calmly and persistently encourage the kid to at least try a bite. So we're showing them that refusal
Doesn't work.
doesn't lead to escape anymore,
Right.
which is tough.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, I can imagine that takes a lot of patience
Oh, yeah.
to just, keep encouraging and not just give in.
Right.
It's so tempting to just, give in, especially if they're making a scene.
It is.
But you're right, consistency is key.
Right. If you sometimes remove the food, then you're reinforcing the refusal behavior.
Yeah, because then they're like, oh, well, sometimes it works.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
And sometimes it doesn't, so I should just keep doing it.
Exactly.
Okay, so that brings up a really good point.
Okay.
We need to make sure that we have control over the reinforcer.
Right.
If we can't consistently withhold it.
Extinction's not going to work.
Extinction's not going to work.
Yeah.
Right? And that makes me think about, in a school setting.
Okay.
When you've got peer attention as the reinforcer.
Right. How do you control what other kids are doing?
It's so hard to control that.
It is.
Even in a structured environment.
You're right. That can be tough.
So what do we do then?
Well, you might have to think outside the box a little bit.
Okay.
Maybe focus on reinforcing alternative behaviors that are incompatible with the problem behavior.
Okay.
So, for example, if a kid's calling out for attention,
right,
you could praise them for raising their hand.
Okay.
Or participating appropriately in class.
So we're kind of like
shifting the focus.
Shifting the focus to something else.
To those good behaviors.
The good behaviors, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not always about like directly, extinguishing.
Right.
It could be kind of
indirectly.
Indirect, yeah, okay.
And you know what? Our sources also talk about how extinction can be used with behaviors that are maintained by sensory stimulation.
Okay, now this is where I get a little confused.
Okay.
Because how do you apply extinction to something that's like internal?
Right.
Like a kid who's, spinning a plate.
Okay.
And the sensory feedback that they're getting from that, like how do you extinguish that?
Well, in those cases, you might use something called sensory extinction.
Sensory extinction.
So let's say the kid loves the sound the plate makes when it spins on a hard surface.
Okay.
You could like cover the table with a soft material.
Oh, so it changes the sound.
It changes the sound.
Okay.
So you're not taking away the behavior, you're changing the environment to change that sensory experience.
So it's still available.
Right.
But it's just not as reinforcing.
Exactly.
I like it. Okay, so we were kind of being like a detective.
Right.
Trying to figure out,
right,
what's maintaining this behavior.
And then get creative. Okay. But there are also times when extinction might not be the best approach.
Okay, when would we not want to use extinction?
Well, the most obvious one is safety.
Safety, okay.
So if a behavior is dangerous, like self-injury or aggression, you can't risk having that extinction burst.
Right, you don't want to make it worse.
You don't want to make it worse.
Yeah, okay, so safety first.
Safety first. What else?
Well, what about those situations where the reinforcer is just like impossible to control?
Right. You got it.
Like we were talking about peer attention.
Right.
If you can't control what those other kids are doing,
extinction's not going to be very effective.
It's not going to work.
Yeah.
Okay. And I guess also, if the behavior is like super infrequent,
right?
Like it hardly ever happens.
Extinction's not really going to do much.
It's not really going to do much.
He's already kind of on an extinction schedule.
Yeah.
It's
like if a fire's already out.
Yeah.
You don't need to put it out.
You don't need to use the fire extinguisher.
Exactly. And then I guess just the practicalities of it too.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You've got to have buy-in from everybody.
Everyone's got to be on board.
Parents, teachers, therapists.
The bus driver.
Everybody.
Everyone.
And if even one person like slips up.
And gives in.
Yeah. It can totally ruin the whole thing.
Right. It's like watering a plant just enough to keep it alive.
Yeah.
But it's not really thriving.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're really seeing here that extinction is not a one-size-fits-all.
It's not a magic wand.
It's not a magic wand.
It's a tool.
It's a tool.
One of many.
One of many. So what happens when extinction isn't the right tool?
That's a great question.
What else do we have?
Well, there are lots of other strategies that we can use.
Okay, so we've talked about when extinction's a good fit and when it's not.
Right.
So what do we do when extinction's not the right tool for the job?
Well, that's where we get to use all the other cool stuff that ABA has to offer.
Like what?
Well, one approach is differential reinforcement.
Differential reinforcement.
Yeah.
What's that?
So it's basically reinforcing those good behaviors.
Okay.
And ignoring or minimizing the problem behavior.
So we're like shifting the focus from the bad to the good.
Yeah, we're focusing on what we want to see more.
Okay.
And there's different types of differential reinforcement, but one example is DRO.
DRO.
Yeah, differential reinforcement of other behavior. So basically, we're praising the person for any appropriate behavior.
Okay.
That happens when they're not doing the problem behavior.
Okay, so it's like
Anything but that.
Anything but that. Yeah.
And we're giving them that attention
Right.
for those good behaviors.
Okay.
And sometimes we can use antecedent interventions.
Antecedent interventions.
Yeah.
What are those?
So that's when we change the environment or the things that happen before the behavior
Okay.
to try to prevent the behavior from happening in the first place.
So we're being proactive
Exactly.
instead of reactive.
We're setting them up for success.
I like that. Okay, so give me an example.
Okay, so let's say a kid always has a meltdown during transitions,
Yeah.
like going from one activity to another.
Yeah.
You could give them a visual schedule
Okay.
or a timer to help them know what's coming next.
So they can prepare.
Exactly.
Okay, and then sometimes we might need to teach new skills
Right.
or replacement behaviors.
Yeah. Like if a kid throws tantrums because they don't know how to communicate what they want,
Okay,
we could teach them sign language or how to use pictures to communicate.
so they have another way,
They have a better way.
a better way to get your needs met.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's really about finding the right strategy
Yes.
for the individual
And the behavior.
and the behavior.
Yeah.
You got to get creative sometimes.
This has been really eye-opening.
I'm glad.
But I'm curious.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about, how to implement these strategies.
Right.
But what about the individual's role in all of this?
Oh, that's a great point.
Like, do they have a say?
Absolutely.
Okay.
ABA is all about collaboration and empowerment.
Okay. Because,
It's not about forcing people to do things.
right. If they're not on board, it's not going to work.
It's not going to work. You
Okay.
got to have that buy-in.
Okay. So it's not just like a therapist-client relationship.
It's more than that.
It's more than that.
It's a partnership.
It's a partnership.
No.
Okay. We need to listen to them. Okay. Understand their perspective.
And involve them.
Involve them in the process.
Okay, and that makes me think about...
Functional assessment.
Yeah,
It's not just about observing behavior.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the person
right.
and why they're doing what they're doing.
And how can we help them
Exactly.
make those changes?
And as we work together, we need to help them build their own motivation.
Okay, because that's huge.
It is.
Like, if they don't want to change,
It's going to be an uphill battle.
it's not going to happen.
Yeah. So we got to get them excited about it.
How do we do that?
Well, we can use their interests.
Okay.
We can set achievable goals
Okay.
and celebrate their successes.
So make it fun.
Make it fun. Make it rewarding.
Yeah.
It's about giving them that sense of ownership
I love that.
over their own progress.
Okay, so just to wrap up,
Yes.
this has been a really amazing deep dive into Extinction
I agree.
and ABA in general.
It's a fascinating field.
It is. And there's so much to learn.
There's always more to learn.
So what's like one key takeaway
One key takeaway.
that you want our listeners to remember?
Extinction. It's a powerful tool,
Okay.
but it's just one tool
One tool in a big toolbox.
in a big toolbox. And the real magic of ABA is about understanding the individual,
Okay.
collaborating with them, and
Empowering them.
empowering them to reach their full potential.
That's what it's all about.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
And to our listeners, we encourage you to keep learning.
Keep exploring.
Keep exploring the world of ABA.
It's an amazing field.
It is. And we'll see you next time.
See you later.